Okay, the geniuses will see us now.
I'm a pro.
He's very unprofessional.
Very unprofessional.
These are our newly arrived surgeons, Doctors Trowbridge and Greenbaum.
Doctor?
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 We're not doctors.
Are you sure they can handle this?
Oh, we can handle it. We're professionals.
You'll forgive us if we're not instilled with confidence.
Potentially unprofessional pieces of content.
All right, welcome to Unprofessional. This is Trevor, your host, and we have a different guest today. We also have a changed format from before. We definitely were on brand and had no format, but now we have it set a little bit better. So the first thing we'll do is have 5-10 minutes of bullshit, and then we will go into current events, like current medical events or just cool ones in the past. And that's about, I don't know, however long that takes, 20 minutes. And then any crazy headlines that we saw in the news, medical related or otherwise. And then finally, we'll leave you with maybe a crazy personal story or something that's related to it, and then some advice to leave you with. So that's how we're gonna do it now. Today we have a guest today, my brother Justin. He's been mentioned on the podcast before as the patron saint, Justin, and yeah, we've been through a lot up to this point, I would say.
I'd say that's a fair statement.
So welcome, man.
Yeah, I'm glad to be on the show. I feel like I've been a part of it indirectly for pretty much the whole thing.
Yeah,
so.
He's been directing things from the coach's booth up top for pretty much the whole time. So, and just a part of the life in general. But yeah, so that's how we're gonna do the podcast now. And right now we're in the middle of northern United States in the Midwest, and it's definitely different out here. I was in New York for like a year and a half, and now there's zero things around me, and it's kind of insane.
Well, let's just say you could literally go outside of where we are, throw a rock lightly, and hit Canada.
I feel like this is the place where you could kill a person and get away with it.
Like Fargo, the movie.
Yeah.
I would agree. I wouldn't do it exactly like that.
Yeah.
I think the wood chipper's a little extreme, but yeah, you could definitely pull something out.
And we were just talking about this last night, but we had this 3-hour deep conversation, and it's like, oh, I wish we were recording this right now, but you can't do that. And then that throws off the whole conversation. Now everyone feels like they're being recorded and stuff, and yeah. And so now I understand why there isn't a ton of just really good podcasts out, or just things in general. It's because you have to capture it while it's happening, and if you do that, then you have to always be rolling, or that's why there's almost reality shows and stuff.
Or you can do it there's a couple that I listen to where they literally just purposely have no show prep. And they come up with some good ideas, and they just jump right into it. They don't even.
Well, that's how Seinfeld kind of worked too. I mean, they formatted it and stuff, but
they wrote it off the cuff.
Yeah. But there's no point to the show. There's no point, and so they could just do whatever, and that's and people can relate to it, and it works,
But yeah, you could you have to hire an audio ninja or something, and they just kind of always record. You never even know.
That would be crazy. Yeah. And then just any tidbits to go in. But there's also part of the process that's important, where it's you have to collect your thoughts, organize them, and then give them. That's an important part of this too. So it's doing that process and having to okay, now I have to sit down and present it. I think it kind of gives a little bit better of a I'm actually giving this in a formatted, organized way, and it's just, it can be better that way too, instead of okay, and then we had this thing happen, and even though it's a great story, you haven't really boiled it down to the bare essentials, or
raw but structured.
Yeah, right.
It's almost like you start riffing on something, and you just make a note that you need to go riff on it again, and maybe it's not quite as raw, but don't prep before that. Just go right back into it.
Right. Because I had a great story on I think that maybe the last podcast was posted, or maybe it was a couple ago. But yeah, I just gave it in such a raw way that it was just not that good, in my opinion. But it's just how it is, But let's go into it, man. So one thing that's been happening in the NHL, the National Hockey League, is, and this has been over like the last year or so, is Jack Eichel. He was on the Buffalo Sabres, and he's had this whole spinal injury thing going on. He's 25 years old, which is crazy. I'm 27. It feels like all these guys are still older than me, but it's not the case. And so I'll just kind of read some of the article and stuff. So the contentious saga between the Buffalo Sabres and center Jack Eichel ended after the Vegas Golden Knights traded the 25-year-old Eichel. Eichel traded public shots with the Sabres over his injury recovery, as the former number 2 overall pick wanted to undergo one surgery while his team, which has final say under the NHL's collective bargaining agreement, hoped he'd get a different procedure done. So he's trying to get one procedure. The team's like, no, we want you to do this other medical procedure, and we're not going to let you do the other one, which is insane that he doesn't have like medical autonomy to do his own thing.
It's wild. And I will point out that Jack Eichel is like a star in the NHL.
Yeah,
it's not just...
We have our NHL correspondent with us, Justin, who is a hockey goalie was a hockey goalie. He's like a U.S. Marine. Once a Marine, always a Marine.
Yeah, there's a whole code and everything, but we'll leave that for a different podcast.
So Eichel herniated a disc in his neck. That was the original injury. Days after his injury, he traveled to an independent specialist to determine its severity. The doctor suggested a surgical procedure that no NHL player has undergone before, which is an artificial disc replacement. So they'd literally take out the disc that's causing the problems, that's pinching on the nerve, and just pull it out and put in a new, like, fake one. And so the Sabres general manager said Eichel was continuing rehab, holding off surgery for the time being, and at that point the Sabres hoped that the disc would just move back into place on its own with enough rehab, and that is a thing. And then Eichel was examined again by the doctor. It was determined he still needed surgery. Team said okay to do a spinal fusion, but Eichel again was like, "Nah, I'm doing the spinal replacement." So yeah, all this was going on. And then finally the Golden Knights offered, after a very long time, a deal for Eichel, and so he was traded to them because he was enough of a headache, and the Sabres are such a terrible damn team that they're like, okay, we need to move on. But so yeah, he'll miss 4 months. He'll get the surgery and he'll rehab it, and that'll be interesting to see how he recovers since it's never been done in the NHL before. But yeah, so I mean, it's kind of a crazy story in a few ways. One, he has no patient autonomy, which is like literally the number one rule for us as medical staff is we have to be like, it's all about whatever they want. We just guide them to what we believe is the best option. And even then, if they don't like the best option, like if they have pneumonia and they're sick and it's like, hey, we just want to give you this antibiotic. And they're like, I don't like the antibiotic and I don't like this one and I don't like that one. You can't force it. So you're just giving them something that's almost like way less effective just because they don't want it. Or if they're like, I don't even want medication, you have to give them the best other options and then they can pick from them. So it's kind of crazy. But in his case, he doesn't get any say just because he's in the NHL. So that's kind of crazy.
But that's a big difference, right? Is that, yes, it's people are the players. Mm-hmm. When you're a doctor and a patient, all you're focused on is the patient. Now, you still have some risk reward based on yourself, right? But in this case, the NHL is a business. The players are the product. What do they want? Well, every player has a finite amount of time where they can generate revenue as a product, right? Yeah. And this is a very, dark way to look at things, but that's how business works.
Seen, yeah.
So what do? Well, they're weighing the risk reward on this experimental surgery that hasn't been proven, that their doctor is saying, don't do it, it's too risky, we just don't know enough. He's not saying don't do it because we don't want to help Jack. He's saying don't do it because we might lose him forever, or the risk is too high, and he's only got a few years to play anyways.
Right.
So it's big time on, and that's why they set it up that way. It's part of the collective bargaining agreement, which is an agreement across all the players.
It was an agreement between the players and the NHL,
or at least the representatives, right?
Yeah,
but at the same time, and I looked it up a little bit, they're entitled to a second opinion and even a third opinion But it has to be, the second opinion has to be through one of the team approved doctors, and there is a whole list to even qualify for that, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, is it really a true second opinion, especially about something experimental and unknown?
I mean, you can hit enough referrals for doctors where you could find someone eventually who's probably going to be like, yeah, I believe that that's the case, you know, with whatever you say, if you go to enough people, you know? So I get it.
Yeah.
I get it to that extent.
And it's still a business, and there's palms being greased. I don't care what anybody says. There's, you know, depending on what's going on, it could be media related or image related, right? But there's money flowing around. That's the other difference between just a normal doctor-patient situation.
Well, and speaking of money flowing around, I know Peyton Manning, we were just talking about this a second ago. He had surgery done on his spine multiple times, and his team was like, yo, do whatever you got to do. As far as I understand, that's how it went down. So I don't know, maybe if you're the quarterback of an NFL team, it makes it different, or just the NFL does things differently, or just that team felt a different way. And so we're like, yo, Peyton Manning, do your thing. But that's how they went about it.
But that's a big difference in this situation, right? I mean, especially when you've got a team saying, well, a team that's that bad. You know, they lost 18 games in a row when Jack went down.
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
So they wanted him back. There's no doubt about that.
Also, and the defense of the Sabres, Peyton Manning wasn't undergoing artificial disc replacement. He was just undergoing the normal spinal fusion.
No, well, at first, but honestly, from what I remember about it, he ended up doing this experimental stem cell thing in a different country where it was allowed, because it wasn't even allowed in the U.S.
Wow.
So they had to let him go and do that. With you know, again, obviously that's not a part of the team doctors and everything else. So,
and it was crazy. Apparently, he got the initial spinal fusion surgery, and then he like woke up, right, and he didn't have any feeling in he couldn't move his tricep, he couldn't flex his tricep, right? And he's like, doctor, like, what is up?
Kind of need this Chuck's
and it's on
Pigskins.
his throwing hand. And he also didn't have feeling in his hand or his fingertips. So he's like, oh my God, what's going on? He's like, it's going to take maybe 3 weeks for you to get the strength back into your muscles, or at least get feeling back into your hand. Well, to this day, it was 4. I read the article 4 years later, which was, I think it was in 2015. He still didn't have feeling in the fingertips of his hand, which is crazy. But anyway, at that time, his arm didn't recover. So now he's like freaking out, and I'm assuming that's when he got the stem cell stuff. But he was doing all this stuff in secrecy because he didn't want anyone to know. It'd be crazy being in the professional sports realm, because you kind of have to keep stuff under wraps and stuff. I mean, any crazy stories you hear about, you can't, you know, you have to be professional. You can't just say it unless you're doing an anonymous podcast. But I don't think that you're really able to do that. People are going to recognize you. But
well, yeah, and it's crazy because it's beyond just his livelihood. There's a lot of livelihoods when it's your your star player, which again they're looking at it as a product, but at the same time the Colts were able to say, look, this is a human being. And he's got to take care of what he's got to take care of. And the difference is he tried a couple things normally first that didn't work. So it was kind of let's try this instead. But at the same time, how fast does tech and science and everything change in the medical industry? I mean, it's got to be constant, right? So you can't, and they're going to weigh that risk reward. So what's it to them, and what's it to the person who has to live the rest of their life versus they're playing hockey for 5 to 10 years or something. Like it's long-term, short-term, and it's different viewpoint from both sides.
Well, and there's definitely going to be a point where it's better to get the surgery. Like it'll make you bigger, stronger, and faster than it would be to not do it. Like I think that's happening with Tommy John surgery in baseball, where it's you almost want Tommy John surgery even if you just barely have an injury, because it just makes you throw faster, I believe.
It's just how the tendons come back together. And
So
get a little torque in there.
Yeah, I think it's starting to be like an issue, and they're starting to be like, okay, well, what are we allowing and what are we not? You know, so it's
definitely complicated, especially like I said, it's changing so fast that what's really going to work. It could be where, like you said, it makes him even better if he gets the artificial disc replacement versus the fusion. But I know the fusion, at least my limited understanding, it limits you.
Yeah. Oh,
Your
definitely.
spine is now
Your
connected.
spine is supposed to bend all through all the vertebrae, but now you're connecting two of them so that they don't move.
And you're trying to play at the highest level as one of the players that are the best in the world. Like to me, that's risky if I'm the player, right? But if they know how it's going to respond for him, at least to a reasonable degree. So that's why they want him to get that. They know it's going to at least work, and he's going to at least be able to play hockey. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, and apparently the Mannings have like degenerative spines, which is just a thing that runs in their family or something. Because Cooper Manning, he couldn't make it because he had spinal stenosis, and it just made it so, because he was a beast mode wide receiver, but no one knows about him now because he just couldn't, his spine just wouldn't allow him to. And then so Manning had it too, but just not as bad. And kind of
that's wild too. But must be real rough when your whole family is a superstar.
Yeah. And then rehabbing from that is insane, and people underestimate it until you actually go through it yourself. You really don't get it. You're like, oh, I could rehab. Like I work out, X amount of times a week. But once you're actually in it and you understand what rehab actually is, you like, as you put it last night, you want to just keep slamming your head against the wall.
It's literally what rehab is you just go line up against a brick wall and you just keep bashing your head against it until all of a sudden you feel better. Yeah. And if you stop early, you did it all for nothing. And if you don't do it right, you did it all for nothing, and you'll never even know because there's no incremental progression, and it's just so frustrating. There's nothing more frustrating.
There's no reward as you go along. You're doing the same exercise how many times a week depending on the injury?
Just depends on what you got going on, but it's one example was I hurt my shoulder and I had surgery. I tore my labrum, and they had me doing little shoulder lifts, and I had been weight training prior to this, like heavy, well, not heavy, but just athletically. And they had me lifting number 2 pencils in sets of 30 or whatever. I'm like, what? There's no way this is doing anything.
So you go from this top athlete of hockey who was like taking care of like NHL players shooting at him at goalie, like top recruited, and you go from that like to lifting number 2 pencils each day, and you're unable to play the sport that you want to play. I imagine
it's very frustrating. And it's like anybody who's an athlete, what do? You incrementally improve every time you go train. So the harder you train, just very small amounts at a time, but you get better and you get better and you get better. I mean, I know people that made it in the NHL that they were not that talented, but they worked harder than any motherfucker out there, period. And they made it based on that. They weren't like superstars or anything, but they made it. Pure effort. And it's the same thing, but every time they go, they're like, we got to get better today. That's the slogan, right? We got to get better today.
That's their life.
Rehab, you don't get better at all. You just keep doing the same dumb shit over and over and over again. And they just keep telling you it's working, and you're like, no. How do you know?
Yeah.
But you just got to have faith and do it. And that's why the first time you do it, it's just the worst because you really don't know. But then when it does work once, you know that if you stay the course, you just got to keep going. But it's still hard to process in your brain. I don't care what anybody says. It's just tough.
Yeah, it's definitely different. I went through that a little bit, but yeah, then Adrian Peterson had the most miraculous recovery of all time from his ACL tear. I mean, that's
those
crazy.
Those guys are fucking freaks, man.
Freaks.
They're just
because he must have just gone in every day like, I'm gonna get better. I'm gonna get better. I'm gonna get let's
even
get
so
this,
their bodies are like have some kind of Wolverine fucking mutation.
Right.
I mean, Bo Jackson even. I know he didn't like play again or whatever, but the dude's still a freak.
So when you talk about your torn labrum, is that when you fell and broke your back and everything?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
the super injury.
Definitely can't go into that full thing because it's like it could be a book in itself. But
it's a little teaser for you ladies and gents out there.
You fell how far? You were at work. You fell how far?
The cliff notes are: I was on a job site. I was 18 feet in the air, and I fell all the way straight onto concrete.
You didn't you hit like some stuff on the way down?
Well, I was on pallet racking, so I as I was going down, I tried to grab myself, which was pointless, but it spun me, and so I landed on my side with my right arm extended above my head, and then
ripped the shit.
That's the only reason I'm alive is because my head hit my arm first, but obviously destroyed my labrum, and it bounced off my arm, and then I still hit my head on the
on the
concrete, but most of it went into my arm instead of just, I mean, I would have no head if I just went straight onto the concrete with it. But one other interesting note, and then we'll go to the rehab part. But when I landed on my side, all the ribs on the opposite side exploded and fractured.
What?
But all the ones that I landed on, I mean, there was some major bruising and some cracks, and I had like bruised lungs and everything, but none of them
That's
had that much
crazy.
damage. It all the force just went through me.
That's crazy. I've never heard of that. That's
Yeah.
wild. So all these ones on this side broke.
Yeah, the ones on the side I didn't land on broke.
That's wild. I had no idea that was
I mean, the other ones were all messed up still, but they didn't it wasn't like that. It wasn't like
That's
all
good
the
though.
force
I mean,
went through.
did you puncture a lung when you?
I didn't puncture a lung, but they were
because it
really
makes sense
bruised.
because they went this way instead of going into your.
Yep.
Dang.
Yeah. Pretty wild.
That's crazy. Yes, you tore labrum. Your head was smashed.
I had a compound fracture in my L4 vertebrae. I had a TBI.
Yeah, traumatic brain injury.
Right. Tore my labrum. They said, I mean, the doctor was like, we might as well just call it 100% tear because it is.
Okay.
And then, so that's not good. And then, lots of obviously bruising, bruised lungs, the whole thing. So
When the surgeon's like, "Yo, this shit's fucked up."
yeah, that's how you know that something's not good. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, we can do a full.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to do full because it's
there's so much to it, especially for you medical guys out there,
Yeah.
and just how it went down. And
yeah, even for people who have no idea, because I know it's like, all right, you have a famous person with you, and they have some kind of injury, and it's like, oh, it's really intriguing, right? And it's like, okay, this random person's telling me about their injury. Why do I give a shit? But this is crazy. I mean, just the severity of all these injuries, how it all went down, the whole progression of the whole thing. I mean, the rehab at the end, which is what we're going to talk about now, but the whole shit is just wild. And the fact that he should just be dead and all this other shit. But
and another interesting thing is just how all the different people that I connected with along this whole journey of, it happening, getting to the hospital, what happened at the hospital, after the hospital, all that is a lot of different people all connecting with me, right? And then how they all reacted to different situations and stuff, and me seeing that.
yeah.
It's pretty wild, both from the medical perspective and from just regular people.
There's
and
a
how they
ton
do
to
things.
learn just as a any medical professional, as just a person, and just lessons
It'll
in
be good.
general. Yeah,
It'll be good.
It'll be something.
But just know I got completely fucked up in a horrible accident and got super lucky that I'm playing hockey again. It's pretty
Yeah,
wild. And
crazy.
I attribute a lot of that to the rehab and the recovery because
Right.
it really is so important. I got lucky, right? I mean, perfect break, compound fracture. I mean, without that, I didn't have to have surgery or anything. I got lucky, but at the same time, I would be lying in a bed. I mean, I had to relearn how to walk and
That'd be
stuff,
fucked,
but I could have not
yeah.
come back if I
Yeah.
didn't work at it
Yeah.
and stay with it. It
Yeah,
was tough.
exactly. Yeah, so you went from an ENT guy running up and going, "Oh my God, it's all mush," when he was pressing the back of your head, to not only walking and talking him, but doing your normal
Living
life, essentially.
life
Yeah.
how I want to without really. I mean, they all told me I have to continue to have a strong back and work out, or it will fall apart. I mean, my surgeon literally said, I'm not my surgeon. Well, the guy who was looking at me if I needed to have surgery, he said, "Look, you aged your back. You have the back of an 80-year-old right now. In one fell swoop, you're not good."
Yeah.
He's like, "But if you really work hard and keep your back strong and just be mindful of it, and always, and it's it's also your legs too. It's not just because you hurt your back, you got to have a strong back. Obviously, that's part of it, but you got to have strong legs so that you don't get out of your posture, and you have to have good posture, period. And just a lot of things that all attribute to that one injury that can go bad in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and I mean, you gotta listen to, even though doctors, let's say they're wrong 1% of the time or something, you listen to them, and if you want a referral or something, fine. But at the end of the day, when you get a list of things that you should be doing, man, do those things, and do them to the T. And you can question stuff all the time if you want. Be like, look, is this working? Is this right? But if you stick with the thing, it's probably gonna work out, And so many people quit rehab halfway through or so. I mean, my mom did it, my other brother did it. I've seen plenty of people do it, and then then you can blame all these other things, but really at the end of the day, you didn't know if you if you would have gone through all the way, if it would have worked out. You know?
I gotta imagine most people stop
There's
too early.
no way that most people make it all the way through, because I know like the discipline of the average person, and rehab, it's just not strong enough to go through a full rehab. Like,
Well, it's all mental, right? You think it's physical, which
Yeah.
it is,
Yeah.
right? But at the same time, most of it is truly mental, because you have to go and keep working at something that does nothing for you. And then even, it's kind of like antibiotics. You're sick, you take antibiotics, you have symptoms, the symptoms go away. You don't stop taking them.
yeah,
There's reasons for that.
it's still there. You just don't feel it anymore, but it's definitely still there.
It's the
and you
same for
wanna make
rehab.
sure.
People will go into rehab, they'll do it, they'll get where they're feeling better, let's say. You're not, most of the time, depends on the injury, but you're not supposed to just stop working on it. What do you think's going to happen? You're going to go back to all your old habits that probably caused it in the first place, and it's going to happen again. You're going to be like, fucking rehab doesn't fucking work. Fuck physical therapy. But that's just, people, it's like a bad reviewer online,
Yeah.
They go and review because they ordered the wrong fucking product. It's
Yeah.
like,
It's like, dude, well, what are we doing? Doesn't make any sense.
So back to Eichel, he, as from a personal perspective, but even from an NHL business product perspective, he's not able to start his recovery until he can have the damn surgery.
Yeah. So he spent months doing nothing, waiting for the surgery. Yeah.
And there's
that's
a
crazy.
timetable until, next year starts. You can't start that timetable in the recovery itself. You don't know that you're going to AP it and fucking be back in a month or whatever from a devastating injury.
Yeah.
I mean, plus it's your spine.
Yeah,
Kind of need that.
He definitely has some just genetic shit going on there, where he just like recovers fast.
Oh, yeah.
That's just not. You can rehab as hard as you want, but it doesn't really necessarily make you come back that much faster. Like you have to just go through the motions every day.
Black
And you
Wolverine.
can't stop. Yeah, exactly.
There's nothing. That's it. But no, he, Eichel's sitting there trying to, he was a Sabre. He was selected first overall by the Sabres. He had loyalty to the Sabres. He wanted to be a Sabre, even though they sucked, but they were trying to rebuild around him and all that. But he can't get back to playing. Not to mention he's missing out on millions of dollars and everything else that goes with that. But he can't get back to playing until he can begin his recovery, and that starts with the surgery. And they won't let him do what he wants because, due to the collective bargaining agreement, he has no control. Which, like you were saying, that's fucking crazy.
Fucking wild, dude. That's fucking crazy. But speaking of recovery, got one more event. So there was this woman with COVID-19. She wakes up after weeks on a ventilator on the day she was being taken off life support. So she was literally dying. It had been weeks, and then the family had already chosen her headstone and everything. And then she got up. It's like just a crazy miracle type scenario. And it just goes to show you never know. It's kind of just up to your body and the illness or your muscles or how it was torn. And like, we can tell you as much as we can about it. We can give you all the things you need, but at the end of the day, it's kind of just up to your body and God, like it just kind of is what it is.
No, I mean, that's crazy in and of itself. I mean, all those people in her family are probably like crying and bereaving. I mean, I think you mentioned that they had the headstone picked out and everything. This person, it's probably already dead to some people, right?
Yeah. Oh,
and
yeah.
then all of a sudden,
the family had already like bereaved, like accepted it and everything, and then she woke up. It's just like, what the fuck, mom?
Why are you doing this to me, mom?
Yeah.
Fucking asshole. That's the other thing too, is we're talking about Jack Eichel and we're talking about the Sabres, but it goes, I mean, one person, especially someone who's a legit person, it's going to touch a lot of different people, and I don't know if he has kids or whatever. He's pretty young, but he might have nieces and nephews and other people that are all really important in both his life and their lives, and they're all being impacted by it, and same for like this mom, like there's probably lots and lots of people that are all impacted by this in one way or another, financially, emotionally. It's a lot. And then you got to reverse that, come back. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah. Rehab's a bitch, I feel like.
Oh, it is.
I just tore my meniscus one time, like weightlifting like an idiot. And then yeah, the recovery wasn't as bad as sounds like it's some of those, but it's definitely a bitch, and you just have to go in every day and just do your work. I mean, that's how you get through medical school and stuff too. Is, I mean, you could be an idiot, but if you just keep working at it every day, you know, crazy things happen.
Knees are better if you're gonna tear something. It's better to do like a knee than it is like a hip or a shoulder. I mean, from my understanding, just because the knee's on a hinge.
Yeah, it's
versus your shoulders on.
I'm supposed to know what the type of hinge is called, but yeah, it's just the one way, right, or the two ways.
Yeah.
Whereas the hip, it can go 360, and same with the shoulder.
Radial, right?
Yeah.
So,
I don't know if that's the name.
yeah, I'll provide the doctor medical knowledge today. You just take this one off, okay, bud?
Yeah. But yeah, there's a lot more movement and stuff, tendons and muscles going on there. So, I mean, just to do this motion with your arm, the abduction, it's one muscle up to here to 90 degrees. Then it's another muscle here and another muscle here. And this like motion here is also like contributed by a couple muscles.
And for those on the radio, he's lifting his
Yeah.
arms straight out to the side and up. So
just like to above my head.
But the intricacies of that movement,
Mm-hmm.
and number one, the fact that your body can recover from an injury to that when it's
Yeah.
so sensitive anyways is just wild. But that's a lot. It's a lot. It's amazing. That's what it is. But
It really
it's
is
a lot.
crazy. Yeah. And the bottom line is our bodies, I mean, you know, as annoying it is to recover and stuff, the fact that it can even recover is
dude.
fucking insane. Like we
crazy.
genuinely have Wolverine ability, like
Yeah.
to recover.
It's
but
nuts.
it's slower timeline. But the fact that it can even happen is insane.
So crazy.
I mean, you can go from completely tearing your shoulder to like combine again. There's these things like, let's say you get abdominal surgery. A bad thing that can happen is like adhesions can happen, right? Like your small intestine can literally connect to other parts of small intestine. Fistulas can happen. So like, let's say you have surgery on your stomach and then your small intestine is kind of touching it. When it's like recovering and doing all of its thing, it's Wolverine effect. It can genuinely combine to the small intestine. So now you have this hole between your small intestine and your stomach. So now it's really bad. You're draining your stomach into your small intestine before it's ready to go through the whole process. Jesus. So like that kind of stuff can happen throughout your whole body. But the fact is that your body created that thing because it thought it was right? So like if your small intestine like ripped apart from each other, your body could combine it back together again. You know what I mean?
Crazy.
Like that's wild. So it can do that with tons of different stuff for your body, and bad things can happen if it does it in the wrong way, right? But as long as you're careful with it, I mean, surgeons can do wild shit.
It's so crazy. That's so crazy. But yeah, no, rehab, I mean, Eichel's got a long road. I mean,
Yeah.
I can't imagine your neck. I mean,
Oh, dude.
think about when you wake up
right.
on the wrong side of the bed or whatever, you got a stiff neck and you can't, you're turning,
Yeah.
side to side. You can't
Fucks up your
actually
whole
turn.
day.
You can't do shit. You can't even think because all you can think about is how you can't like move your head,
Yeah.
and then he's going to try to recover from that and go play hockey or whatever. And it is a new thing. I'm assuming that if they are able to actually replace that disc, it's going to be night and day better than fusing it
Oh
together,
yeah.
right?
If they can get it in there with like no complications, everything's solid.
It's
yeah.
still risky because it's a newer thing,
Yeah.
and will it last? There's a lot of questions.
I mean, it sounds kind of invasive too. I mean, they're literally replacing
taking it out.
I feel like the complications of that could be pretty high. I don't know.
Yeah, I would agree. But, who knows? I don't even know what that
I don't know
recovery's
enough
like,
about.
but
Yeah, I mean, this is like neurosurgeons, not only neurosurgeons, but the top neurosurgeons in the world, because they're doing a new procedure that's
on a
never-
prominent
yeah.
person, too. It's not just
right.
Joe
So they're probably
Schmo.
just nasty at their job.
Oh,
That's
man.
all they do. There's this joke in medicine for neurosurgeons. It's I don't remember the full thing, but it's essentially neurosurgeons forget the names of their kids because they just never go home. That's all they do is they're just doing surgeries and at the hospital and reading all day.
That's why I would never want to be like a high-level executive. Like, I'm just in business or whatever, but I would never want to be like a high-level executive, C-level employee, because you're choosing your job over everything else. That has to be what's most important to you, what you're most passionate about.
Has
Because
to be.
why would you do that then?
Yeah.
You're putting you
has
don't
to be
care about the
everything.
money at
Right.
that point. I mean, you do, but let's be honest, you just want to put everything you have into that and be the best at it, which that's respectable if that's what you want to do. But man, I mean, I know you wouldn't want to be anything
No,
like that either.
I don't want
It's
to go
just too
all
much.
in like that. Yeah. Hopefully, I just want to go hard for the amount that I am, and I have to go really hard because I'm goddamn dumb. But then once I get there, I'm going to chill out a little bit, and I'm sure a lot of people say that and don't do it. Hopefully, I do, but I feel like that's the move.
That's your planned path, but at the same time, you got to be ready to adjust.
Oh,
if you
yeah,
need to.
right,
Life goes
right.
a lot of different ways. I can attest to that. But
Right. If I have a child or something, that's definitely gonna throw things out of the.
yeah,
out of the
but at
mix.
least you haven't had any near misses or anything like that.
no,
so,
luckily,
you know, you just don't have to worry about it.
All right. Any personal stuff? Oh, yo, I want to talk about one thing. Yeah, you mentioned the other day cholesterol, because you are having. Your doctor has been saying what? Just you've been having. How old are you, first of all?
I'm 36.
You're 36. They start checking cholesterol, I think, at 35 regularly, like every 2 years or something. And then your doctor was saying your cholesterol's kind of high, right?
Yeah, so I had gone in for a regular checkup, which it sounds about right on the timing, I
Yeah.
think, because it's been like about a couple years, I would say. And he was like, yeah, I just want to run a blood panel on, and just check your, go a little deeper than we normally do on just your physical or whatever. And I'm like, all right, cool. Like I used to be, I don't want to get checked. I'm too tough. I'm young. I'm invincible. But now I know way better than that.
Yeah,
So
he was one of the guys who didn't wear gloves in the wintertime because he thought it was like sick.
Yeah, I'm just so tough to hurt myself. I mean, none of it makes any sense. But
I did the same thing.
Yeah,
If
it's
any consolation.
completely ass backwards. But point being, I'm like, let's go, let's do it. I don't care, And it came back, and he was like, yeah, you're fine, but it's a little, it's kind of on the higher side than where we'd want you to be. We gotta if you're willing to try and work on it, we can just try that path first. And so recommendation was just diet and exercise, right? I mean, that's a big part of it, is making sure you're doing those things correctly. And but yeah, he just, and then coming back in, right, another checkup, he's like, I just talking about the diet and exercise and everything else, and it hasn't been, I will admit that I haven't been doing probably everything I should. So more than likely, it's still, my levels are probably still a little high, and he wants to, he's recommending medication. And I have another checkup in a few weeks to kind of do the whole panel again and see where it's at, and then he's gonna probably recommend that.
Yeah, and then I mean the treatment for cholesterol, like high cholesterol, which happens in tons of people, and especially in men, you want to keep it low, because the number one killer for men in the United States is cardiovascular disease, which is caused by bad cholesterol. It just creates like plaques, and then your heart can't get all the blood supply it needs, and then it just like breaks down.
Well, it builds up over time, right? So like
it builds up over time,
and it doesn't
right?
really go away, right?
It doesn't really go away. You can, like, the more good cholesterol you have and the less bad cholesterol you have going through your bloodstream at a time, the better. And they are starting to believe, it's a theory, that the HDL, the like good cholesterol, can actually remove some of the bad plaques that are building up. So it could reverse itself. We don't know that for sure yet, but yeah. So then the treatment is lifestyle changes, which I talked to a guy who's been a physician for like 40 years, and he's like, look, the lifestyle changes do some, but they're not crazy. They don't make crazy changes. Like, you don't expect your cholesterol to drop a bunch because you start like running and eating good. In most cases, that's super good, and you should be doing that anyway. But just don't expect your cholesterol to just completely change. And then another thing, I mean, the main thing is we put people on statins, which is a drug, right? But people don't really want to go on drugs, which makes sense. I don't want to go on drugs either if I don't have to. So, you take like a healthy person like Justin, and it's like, hey, we're going to give you this drug, even though you feel really healthy and stuff, and you don't like to take drugs, as you shouldn't. So, how do you feel about it? You don't want to go on it.
I never want to have
Right.
any kind of medicine or anything. And I've been fortunate. I don't have like allergies. I don't even have glasses. Like I've got a good, clean bill of health, and I work at it, right? But at the same time, I don't want to take anything, even if they tell me it's just low chance of side effects or no side effects. I just still don't. I don't.
And it's easy for me to just be like, oh no, just take your drug, like it's important. But I'm not the one who has to take it every day and be like, man, do I really need this? Or it's making you feel a certain way, like every day. Like if you're actually getting muscle pains, which is one of the possible symptoms, like you're like, what the fuck? Like I wasn't feeling anything before, and now I'm feeling something because I'm taking this, and I don't want to take drugs in the first place. And now it's like, what am I doing?
Right, and you're assuming that that's what it is. It could be something else. You don't know. Like you're not like measuring it necessarily as just that. Plus, some people might be taking other medications and stuff too. I mean, I wouldn't be, but you never know. But my biggest fear is I don't want to stay on it. If I don't have to.
Right.
If I need to, because my diet isn't super great right now or not good enough, and I need to make some bigger changes there, I'm willing to work at that. but I know it's going to take some time. It's not always easy. Shit happens in life, and sometimes you get busy and it goes away a little bit, but I'm always coming back to it. Problem being, I don't want to stay on it forever, so how am I even going to know that I've recovered the other way, that I've done better in my diet, that I've done better in my exercise, and I can get off this pill
And that's
now?
the thing. It's not really like a recovery thing. It's like you're kind of on it for the rest of your life, and it's like annoying to put it that way, and you kind of shouldn't if you're a doctor, but you have to be honest and be like, look, there's no reason we would really take you off of this at any point. So we're either just going to increase the dosage or maybe decrease it a little bit, but you're pretty much on it forever.
But at the same time, I'm in control of my own life too. So what I would maybe do is say, look, I know I'm not pretending to myself. If I get to the point where my diet and my exercise are just money, it still doesn't mean that, I'm doing right. My cholesterol is going to be fine, right? There's a lot of factors there, but I would be willing, if I was doing it consistently, to say to my doctor, I'm going to stop taking this. But I want to stay close on it, and I want to do some kind of way to test that, yes, I am doing better on my own over time here, that it is not, my levels aren't, like we take a baseline and that my levels aren't going up still because of it. We check. And then if they are, I'll go back on, I'll do whatever he says, So there's, to me, at least that's my thought process. And I'm not going to go against my doctor, but at the same time, I get how some of it works, right? What is he supposed to say? Oh yeah, just stop taking it. No, he's going to say keep taking it forever, like you said. So, but I don't necessarily want to, if I can do the right things to be where I need to be. If I can't, I'll do whatever he says. I want to stay alive.
And then that's why you just work with your doctor, because he's gonna, I mean, if he's a good doctor, he's just gonna have your interests at heart. So he's gonna be like, okay, look, like I understand you don't want to be on this. I understand it's giving you muscle pain. Let's decrease the dose, see how it changes things, and then we'll go from there. Yeah.
So then eventually, especially if I'm willing and being open, I'm not just being like, fuck this, I'm not taking medicine.
Right. Well, a lot of people do that. I mean, especially in like the populations that we've been seeing. But yeah, I knew this one girl. She had lupus, super shitty, and she was like taking steroids for it, and that really affects you. And then she was just told me one time, "Oh, I'm just gonna stop taking them because it makes me feel really bad." And I didn't know enough back then, but I was like, "Okay, damn." But man, you gotta just talk to your doctor and work with them and tell him how you actually feel about it, and then he'll be like, "All right, look, if you're not on this, it's going to super negatively impact you, like, and it may increase your chance of dying and stuff. So we'll work with whatever you need, but we need to do something at least kind of like this, even if we, make you feel better by decreasing it or changing it or whatever. But you got to be honest with them, like, especially if you stop something cold turkey, like that could kill you depending on what it is. Even stopping alcohol cold turkey can kill you. People
aren't all, especially if something's afflicting them, whether it's a mental thing or an addiction or just a disease, they're not in the right headspace, So even though the doctor's making sense to them, they might be focused on whatever other thing, maybe someone else told them or whatever's in their head, and they're just focused on that. I'm quitting. I'm stopping drinking. Yeah. Like someone they know got into a drunk driving accident and died. Well, and they're addicted and they have a problem too, but they're like, I'm done. I'm just quitting right now. And maybe they mentally can turn it off like that, but maybe the doctor's opinion is don't. Yeah. Like, we need to have a plan here. And they're like, no, I'm fucking done, And
in most cases, if you're doing something bad and you stop cold turkey, it's just going to be tough and you can get through it and it'll be fine and it won't like kill you. But there's just a couple that would, but yeah, I guess just mention it to somebody who kind of knows their shit, and that's probably a good way to go about it.
Yeah, but that's the thing is, like, if I go in there and I'm like, look, I'm going to do what you say for my health. I get that. But at the same time, you got to work with me to try and, what do you recommend we come up with to try and baseline this, to try and see if what I've done is enough, and if it's not, I gave it my best shot and we'll just go back on it,
Yeah, but the bottom line is a lot of men don't even go into the doctor, which that's the same.
It's
with
crazy.
Me. It's the same with me though.
I used to be just like that. Man. I still am like that, but I force myself because I know that that's just insane.
Yeah.
Especially if you like, I just work for a corporate business job or whatever, but all that shit's gotta go paying. You just gotta go do it.
Yeah. Right.
And you can do it during work. I mean, it's just, there's no excuse except your own.
Yeah, and then we got advice. I mean, we pretty much went over a lot of that stuff like the repetition, just staying with stuff. But
Well, before we get into any of that, I'd like to hear about just how people react to good news sometimes, or any kind of news in the from a doctor telling them what's going on, and like how they can different scenarios that you may or may not have.
People act in different ways, Justin. Some people get very excited and are very happy. Some, have a flat affect and don't react very much. And sometimes, especially when you're in New York, for instance, this one time we had this guy. We gave him a good prognosis. We're in the emergency room. We're like, hey, we feel the vascularization in your foot and everything. You're not gonna lose your leg. It's all gonna be good. You just got to stick to this regimen and everything. And he exclaimed his excitement by going, "Brah, drah, drah, drah." And that we all had to join in because we wanted to really feel like we were with him. And so the whole emergency department is just like, "Drah, drah, 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 drah." But no, that was pretty funny.
When you first told me that, the only thing I could think of was just, and obviously I know Trevor better than anybody listening, but the first thing I could think of is that guy going into a brah, brah, and Trevor just jumping in, just brah, 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 and then the whole medical staff just all brooding for the success.
Yeah. No, honestly, it's cool being in medicine just to see all the people who do different shit like that. Even the people who are like, all right, I just want to give this person an IV so we can start some fluids on them. Like going up to this 60-year-old man who's probably been through so much stuff in his life, and he's like yelling and screaming at me because he doesn't want this IV, but deep down I'm pretty sure he's just scared of like getting a needle prick.
Right.
And I'm like, damn. And he's like, oh God, you're doing it wrong. Like other people have done this way better. Like, what are you doing? Like, oh, like isn't the needle supposed to be like this? Like, oh, it's like, yo, you're not helping me get this needle in. I'm trying to help you. And I don't say any of this stuff, but
it's a big topic which we can get into when I go into my whole story. But the stress of both the patient, what they're feeling, how it's affecting them, but then how that's impacting the doctor or the nurse or the medical person working on them. It all has an impact. And if that person wants to have a successful IV put in or surgery or whatever, creating additional stress generally doesn't help.
Generally doesn't help, right?
At least in my experience. But yeah, I bet it's awesome to see. I mean, there's some probably crazy negative reactions, but I think some of the positive ones you can take home and just like someone where it's just a pure emotional just response, of yes. Like they're not thinking about it. It's obviously based on everything that's ever happened to them up to that point, but it's like they're just like, fuck yeah, and that's how they react, and it's. I bet it's just cool to see, no matter, even if it's super weird or funny or whatever, but right. I bet it's just cool, period.
And I imagine that's why people burn out of the emergency department, more often than any other type of physician, is partially because it's just like that emotional thing every single time you work. Like it's all these ups and super downs and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, a big problem is just the documentation. I mean, you're just sitting down and typing for like hours instead of working with patients a lot of the time, but
right.
But yeah, it's a lot of that.
Take the wins when you can get them, essentially.
Definitely. But yeah, my advice today is do something every single day that's physical. As David Goggins would say, do something that sucks every day. It's just like big. I mean, it's like doing the rehab thing, but just for your like body and like your life. It just makes everything better, especially if you do it in the morning. I've found that it makes my whole day like more energetic or whatever, and like it makes it so I can just sit down and study for hours and hours and hours because like I got all that energy out and stuff. Yeah, and it's just good. Like, I mean, shit, if you have high cholesterol or you don't want to have high cholesterol, maybe go on those runs or work out, and just it prevents so many things. I mean, there's so many. You could answer every question that I take on these tests as lifestyle changes first, and then don't smoke and take your medication. Like if you do all those things, you're just way better off. You're way better off.
I'm not a doctor, but I'm pretty sure there has never been a prognosis or even a recommendation from a doctor that didn't start with diet and exercise.
Right.
I mean, that even if you do need medication, there's diet and exercise is going to help you become healthier no matter what. And even if you're not getting anything out of doing 10 push-ups right when you wake up, it signals to your body, it signals to your brain that it's time to get fucking going. You know, it's the same for like stretching. There's certain kind of like static stretching, like especially for like, you know, ice hockey goalies or whatever, but sports, it's actually harmful for you to do it prior to doing your athletic activity. But you do it in a way that just triggers in your brain that it's your muscles, it's time to get going. We need to be ready. And that's the reason you do it, you know? So there's lots of schools of thought, but I think I totally agree with you. I know just from my experience, I'll play hockey super early on Sunday mornings sometimes. Really, like earlier than I ever wake up, like 6 a.m. and shit. And I absolutely hate getting up early in the morning. But every Sunday that I end up doing that, and that I can do that, I have the greatest day ever because I go and I do this intense workout, come back, it's still the morning, and I'm able to just power shred an entire day, and I just have full of energy, and then I just sleep well at night. I mean, you can't ask for anything better. It's not 100% attributed to that, but it certainly goes a long way. So if you make it a habit, you're going to get that. You're going to train your brain and your muscles and everything it's time to get going.
Yeah, and I mean, the biggest difficulty, like the barrier to entry for it, is just, can you get out of bed and do it? You know, it's hard. I mean, the bed's like comfy, like you don't want to get out, and you have to wake up earlier than you normally would, and yeah, it's a lot for you to, like, you know, justify to your mind, because you're like, yo, I could be studying right now, or I could be doing this, but the whole point is it improves all of that. So if you just like get up, do your thing, and then start your day, you know, it's just,
well,
it's just
I mean,
to
to be fair, as tough as I maybe sound for getting up early and going and doing this, I would say about 50% of the time I would just bow out and go back to sleep if I wasn't the goalie that 14 other people were depending on for that.
Yeah.
But I absolutely cannot do that to all those people, even if I'm tired and want to go back to sleep. I can't. Yeah. So I'm kind of thankful that I'm in that position, or I might miss a few more, but at the same time, when you're able to do that to yourself and push past that, it's a win in a lot of ways, and I think that's part of why it becomes a good day after as well.
When a lot of this stuff used to be like way back, you know, we're in like villages and stuff, or just like, you know, or like natives, it was all natural to us. Like you would just get up because other people had gotten up, you know what I mean? Or you know, because everyone's living in the same area, or you would go on a run because you had to, you know, so it wasn't, you didn't this is a first world problem, you know, but it is a real problem, and you have to like account for it, because you don't have to do any of these things anymore, but you used to, and it just became natural, and it was just it was second nature to everyone.
Absolutely. And that's some good tag on advice too, is sometimes if you can't do it on your own, you can't get up on your own. Well, find someone to do it with. You know, if you have a partner, you know,
get
partner
laid.
Training. Get laid.
Get laid.
It's really the answer to everything.
Yeah, that we need to go on runs every morning.
I'll tell you, I was kind of in that situation for a little bit too, and it's much harder to go and leave the warm bed when she's
100%.
laying right there too.
Yeah. That's why I just accept that my next morning is essentially ruined, because I know I won't get up. Like, I'm laying next to this girl and we're nice and warm.
But if your only aim is a little extra physical activity, you don't necessarily have to leave the bed for it at that point. So it's, you know, you're kind of, depends on what your goals are, I guess.
Yeah. All right, man. Let's see how much time we have.
I mean, we're going to have to stop it at some point, because we'll just talk forever. We were planning on going to bed last night around midnight after a movie, and then I think we went to bed at 3, just trading stories, and I thought I already gave him all my stories, but not even close.
And I just like pulled out my phone and just started recording last night when you started talking about your Rush City story. So from then on, it's all recorded. Yeah.
Oh my, no way.
Yeah. So I got the fight stories. He went over 3 fight stories that are just fucking ridiculous.
Oh my god.
And that's, oh man, I want to go into it, but we can't. But that's just not how the world really is anymore. We discussed that too, but it's more just like, you know, Twitter like bullshit. It's like yelling at each other, you know, like
you should make a note to talk about the bullying thing and how much that's changed over the years,
100%,
especially from just our age difference and what it means now. It's crazy.
I mean, there's a reason that people are getting so fucking depressed now and all this other stuff, because there's just this mental, like, spiritual warfare going on over social media.
When anybody can do it, and you can get mass groups of people globally to target someone or something or anything.
Like
before it was, if you wanted to go make fun of little Timmy or whatever, you had to go right up to his fucking face and slap his books out of his hand or whatever. Like, you can't. You can get the whole world to hate this guy and cancel him from his life if you want.
God.
Like, it's fucking nuts.
And you really can't do a lot about it. Like, the whole mob is against you now, and it's they don't even have to come up to you and say anything or do anything. It's just happening behind closed doors. Like, it's and
it builds like a snowball effect, and then all of a sudden you're getting hit by a fucking avalanche you didn't even know was there, and you'd no part of even building. Like, it's just wild.
Whereas before it was very simple. You just, you got your ass kicked, or, this one guy would slap your books out of your hands.
Yeah, and your dad says, "Oh, you just got to stand up for yourself," or whatever, right? Or you go tell. I mean, there's a few different options there, but either way, it's a direct.
It was much simpler.
Activity or a direct response versus indirect with masses of people.
Right. Now it's like, oh, did this person like this
mob
post,
mentality?
Or did they say this thing about this, or maybe they were mentioning me when they said that, over this thing, and it's like, oh my God, I'd rather fucking just blow my brains
extreme
out.
Or not, it's basically essentially Nazi propaganda, right? I mean, what the fuck? Nobody.
It's this propaganda battle,
purely. But anyway, we got to cut it because there's too many topics and. We'll go forever.
Yeah, 100%. We'll have to do another one. We'll definitely do your injury story, just because that's a really good one.
No, it's great. That could be 2 podcasts with the amount, especially targeting the medical stuff. It's pretty interesting. Man.
Definitely. But all right, hope you guys like the new format, and we'll be back next Tuesday. So thanks for tagging along.
Stay unprofessional, everybody.
Stay unprofessional, bitches.